Good evening and welcome to Chicago Tonight, Black Voices. I'm Brandis Friedman and thanks for joining us. On the show tonight, Governor Pritzker signs the Safety Act amendment into law. We break down the changes that were made to the legislation. Plus, more families become food insecure, why some in the medical community are now calling it a public health crisis. And we head back to Rent to Own, talking to the creators of the hit comedy series Southside about what's to come for season 3.
I feel like we're all in this room together, so let's experience the same things, in your own way.
And Chicago singer-songwriter Manasseh sings the gospel of psychedelic soul. All that coming up, but our first story tonight, changes to the Safety Act. That's right after this.
Chicago Tonight, Black Voices, is made possible in part by Fifth Third Bank and by the support of these donors.
At Fifth Third, we believe when diverse voices are heard and empowered, communities are made stronger, lives are made better, and the future holds greater promise for all. That's why we're proud to support Chicago Tonight Black Voices. Together, we can make a difference. Together, we can drive change.
In a month, Illinois will become the first state in the nation where those arrested for crimes will not have the option of paying bail. Instead, whether someone stays in jail as they await trial will be based on a series of metrics. Illinois lawmakers spent their last day of session this year making last-minute changes to the law known as the Safety Act, which Governor J.B. Pritzker has now signed into law. Joining us now to unpack some of those changes are State Senator Robert Peters, a Democrat from Chicago, Garion Gatewood, Executive Director of the Illinois Justice Project, and Emmanuel Andre, Deputy of Policy and Strategic Litigation in the Office of the Cook County Public Defender. Gentlemen, thanks to all three of you for joining us. Senator Peters, we heard this week, sadly, about the death of your colleague, Senator Scott Bennett. Tell us a little bit about his role in the Safety Act.
Yeah, Scott was an early supporter of ending cash bail. I think he did a town hall back in 2018, and he was a key person in the negotiations that led to the trailer bill. The best way to describe Scott is that he had an amazing sense of humor. He was incredibly smart. He took the time to talk to you about his positions and where he was at. And he's going to be deeply missed in the Senate, and I know that his family is going through a lot, but he really played a key part in making sure this happened.
And of course, our condolences on his death. I know he was a colleague and a friend of yours. About the Safety Act, tell us exactly what the Act does and what some of the changes are that will go into effect in January.
Yeah, so I think the first part is that it ends cash bail, right? So money is not the determining factor. It's actually going to be based off of a set of metrics that's really built around a safety standard. So whether someone's like a threat to someone or a specific community, as an example. And then the other one is if someone's a flight risk or has a history of possibly missing court. Other than that, everybody else, if they don't pose a threat to someone and they're not a serious risk, they can actually go back to their life, and instead of having money taken out of their pocket, they'll keep that money in their pocket to be able to pay for, they'll be able to pay for food for their kids or pay for rent, keep their job. And there's some other parts there as well that, we make sure when it comes to electronic monitoring that people, get some time. They're able to get some time served for that if a judge deems to, but compared to where it's been now, it's not that, and they can actually both with GPS and electronic monitoring, be able to get that. Yeah, a
lot of detail in this law.
Yeah, I can go on for a long time.
I'm sure you can, because I know you're very well versed in it. Gary, and how did the Safety Act become the subject of misinformation, though?
The Safety Act became the subject of misinformation because it was election season. There was a huge focus on removing folks who are in office now, and the main focus was we're going to spread misinformation to several different communities in different modes to spread misinformation with the goals of creating chaos. I would say what the misinformation campaign miscalculated was how much people would push back on that misinformation and how organized people would be from grassroots organizers to policy folks to elected officials and also to folks in the journalism field. You send out fake newspapers, you're going to send up the signals for folks who actually do this for a living, and you're going to get a lot of pushback on that. So I think they weren't prepared for the amount of pushback and the level of organization in the pushback that we were able to give. I think when we first started to see a lot of that misinformation campaign, we put on somewhere between 40 public education campaigns around the entire state to stop the spread of misinformation, from stories from local affiliates to statewide papers, you name it. We were trying to get the good word out there about the truth about the changes to the Safety Act.
I know my colleagues were very familiar with some of the misinformation that was being used in the name of the press. Emmanuel, what does this mean for the Public Defender's Office, and how will the Safety Act be implemented for you all? What does this mean for the Public Defender's Office?
I mean, from the Public Defender's Office, we think this is a really good change, and it has the possibility for a transformative impact, to be very frank with you. As an attorney, nothing hurts more than when you're standing there and you're forced to enter a plea because someone has been sitting in a jail and we got to take a big step back. Everyone here is presumed innocent. That's first and foremost. Everyone we're talking about is presumed innocent. And they've been sitting in a jail 2 or 3 years, and then there's an offer that comes down that says, hey, you can walk out right now, or you can take the risk and risk more years. So that's an incredibly painful thing to go through. And I think this levels the playing field a little bit more, where wealth is not the determining factor, because in the Public Defender's Office, we only represent people who can't afford an attorney for the most part. So that in many ways that directly impacted the way we do our job. So hopefully this will transform that.
Part of the amendment also includes support for public defenders' offices. Everybody knows that there's not a public defender's office in this country that is probably not overloaded. How is this going to impact the workload for your office?
Well, we hope that long term this will help get us more support and therefore decrease the workload for our office. So that's the hope, that you have more people working on cases, and that we're able to bring on more social workers and different things and different people like that to be able to have that real impact. But most of that change, I think, will impact a lot of public defenders statewide, so downstate, that has even less resources than we do. But it's critical, again, when you're thinking about what we're talking about is people who are presumed innocent and who needs to have their day in court. So.
Senator, obviously you said you can go on about the bill. What other changes does the Safety Act make?
Yeah, so I think a good part to point out is the fact that we create the grant program to make sure that, if your county's downstate, be able to have public defenders. I think that's just vitally important. Another thing that we will have a change on is the fact that, talking to folks about having some video hearings. But what we said is, okay, we'll have some video hearings, but we want to make sure that people actually are able to have their first hearing much quicker than they normally do under the status quo. So we see a shift that happens there. We implemented to make sure that it can go into effect. Having had negotiations is creating stages so that there's a timeline for people before January 1st. We call it 90, 60, and 7. So if someone's under the dangerousness standard, it's 90 days that they have to have their first hearing there, then 60 days for willful flight, and then for everybody else, low level will be 7 days. All of that is to make sure that we have not only a good running system, but a proper transition, and the fact that we want to make sure that people don't have a way out from making sure that this implements right. We want to make sure that everybody has the time and space to get this done, as well as the people have the resources they need to get this done.
Garion, you've been in this fight to end cash bail for a while now. What's next in this movement?
Next in this movement is implementation. All right, we can have the press conferences and have the high fives and the ticker tape parades for bills being signed and laws being passed and the changes that we see, but implementation is where you're going to see the most impact in this, I believe. We've been a part of implementation working groups here in Cook County. I have the pleasure of co-chairing one of the working groups here, and also at the statewide level, I have the pleasure of co-chairing the pilot sites group. So we have 5 pilot sites, 3 major pilot sites across the state. 2 of them had a couple of counties in there, so we had overall 5 pilot sites where we got to start to see some of the changes and how the implementation will work. That work is going to have to continue to go. We're going to have court watching, and we're going to have to continue to have those voices in the community who have been impacted by this in the past continue to be a part of this entire process. We want to make sure their voices are heard and they're leading a lot of this implementation work.
I see your fellow panelists nodding their heads. I know they're in agreement. Unfortunately, we're going to have to end it there. My thanks to the 3 of you, State Senator Robert Peters, Garion Gatewood, and Emmanuel Andre for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Up next, treating food insecurity as a public health issue. That's right after this. The pandemic and inflation are worsening a crisis that many in the medical profession are now calling a public health crisis: food insecurities. The Greater Chicago Food Depository estimates that while food insecurity is overall 19% higher compared to pre-pandemic levels, it is 37% higher for Black households. Joining us now with more are Dr. John J. Shannon, former CEO of Cook County Health and also a board member of the Greater Chicago Food Depository; Monica Moss, also a board member of the Greater Chicago Food Depository; and Aisha Butler, co-founder and CEO of RAGE. That's, of course, the Residential Association of Greater Englewood. Thanks to all three of you for joining us. Dr. Shannon, let's start with you, please. Last month, you wrote an opinion piece for Crane Chicago Business calling food insecurity a public health crisis. Tell us how so, please.
Well, the big problem related to this is, first of all, the striking number and the frequency of food insecurity that we see in the wealthiest country in the world at the wealthiest point in its history. And the prevalence of that has gone up substantially with the pandemic, and it's gotten worse with the cost of food and the inflation that we've seen, particularly over the past year. So that's the part that's driving the food insecurity part. But in addition to that, there are problems with access to food, and particularly access to high quality, nutritious food at a reasonable price that families can afford and that they can get to. And that's what I think we're going to be talking about today.
How does food insecurity impact someone's overall health and their well-being?
Well, it's a very significant, aside from the fact that hunger is a very basic human drive. The fact is that if you look particularly in the Chicagoland area, the striking difference that you see in life expectancy across different zip codes is largely driven by premature deaths because of complications of chronic diseases of adulthood, like high blood pressure, diabetes, overweight, heart disease, and related conditions like chronic kidney disease. Those conditions are hugely affected by what people eat. And the lack of ability that some people have to get to high quality foods leads them to default to low quality, poor nutrition foods that's often highly processed. And that highly processed food is frequently very high in sodium, in glucose, and preservatives like sulfites and nitrates that lead to higher rates of cancer, not only to higher rates of conditions like diabetes and high blood pressure and problems controlling those conditions. So these things are intermingled.
Monica and Aisha, I see you both nodding your heads in understanding and agreement. Monica, tell us how food insecurity disproportionately impacts Black and brown communities.
Thank you for that question. I think Dr. J really started this conversation off right. We have seen that in Black and brown communities, people living in these communities do not have equal access. They are having to make decisions and choices about what is most important. And many times the access to food is either not there or just can't be afforded. So what we're seeing is that being a Black or brown person in many communities, that means that you will have less of an option for healthy food choices. And what we're doing at the Food Depository is trying to address those needs by making sure that we are making quality food available, that people are able to connect to food through our website, which is a way that we can help people to actually find food, but also trying to make available food that is even more convenient for people. We're finding that when you don't have a lot of time and you're trying to take care of a family, we are finding that prepared meals even can be a help for families. So that is something that we are doing at the Food Depository, just really trying to make the connections for people. And we're trying to address those structural issues that are underlying, like issues of poverty and racism that keep people from being able to be fully invested in their communities. And
Sorry, well, I wanted to get Aisha Butler in here because we know that the Whole Foods in your neighborhood of Englewood closed its doors last month. What have you heard from neighbors about their access to food since then?
Just in general, just I live here too, so I could just tell you it's been a struggle. I had said recently I've been going to, I always go to Aldi's, and just recently our quality of our fruits and our vegetables at Aldi's have declined significantly in the last few months. The other day, I had to do an Instacart to another location because I don't have something that's readily accessible that I can run and grab something for a morning smoothie or to get fruit for the week or whatever the case may be. So it trickles down, and exactly what Dr. Shannon said and what Monica said. I mean, we see it, up close and personal in places like Inglewood because we don't have really a lack of any options here.
Aisha, you call it food apartheid instead of a food desert. Tell us why.
Because I do think, and I know that this is systemic. When you think about the communities that have the low life expectancy rates, these are also the communities that are redlined. These are also the communities that have a lack of economic development happening. And so it's all related. This is not something that is separate. And when you think about it being a public health issue, it's very similar to violence. These are systemic things that have happened. And to me, apartheid is a systemic, is a systemic thing. It's not something that's natural, that we should not have access to healthy food, or that violence is happening, or that our schools are closing. And so people are fed up. And then, we got word that it's supposed to be another Save-A-Lot. And so the community is right now up in arms about our options, especially at that space that Whole Foods was at.
Monica, for folks who live in a so-called food desert, how are they impacted by having to travel and to make that distance to access food?
It's everything. I mentioned before convenience, and just, when you have the things in your community that make life easier, it makes it easier to put food on the table for your family. And so one of the things we've done at the Food Depository is just listen to communities, and we realize that people need more options, just like Aisha was saying. They need more options in their community. So we are making investments in the community. We've identified the 40 highest need communities and decided, hey, let's invest in the people. Let's listen to the people there because they have their own solutions. We're not coming in saying what your solution should be. We're saying we want to hear from you. So we've been able to create some options and some help through different pantries that have been included in the community.
And of course, we know that. Go ahead. I was just going to mention, because we're actually almost out of time, that you've written also about a number of public policy solutions that are possible as well. Of course, we'll have to direct folks to our website in order to access that, since we're out of time. But meanwhile, I do want to thank the three of you for joining us, Aisha Butler, Monica Moss, and Dr. John J. Shannon. Thank you so much.
Our pleasure.
Thank you.
The South Side is back on the grind. Season 3 of HBO Max's hit comedy set where else but on Chicago's South Side debuted this week, and the jokes are as fast and as furious as ever. We met with South Side creators, writers, and actors Bashir Salahuddin, Diallo Riddle, and Sultan Salahuddin to talk about what to expect this season.
Got a number? Yeah, 5-0. Yeah, we ain't got no numbers like that. Okay, we're gonna do this like this. All right, you know what? These are numbers over here? Okay. All right. Let's see what we got here. We got K21.
I think season 3 we really tried to focus on giving more time and more camera time to our regulars and to our heavily recurring characters. There are folks people have come to love, and we think this season people are going to get to sort of meet them and know them a little more deeply.
Oh, hacky sack. That's not a number. Oh, here we go. All right, here we go. Got it. That's my number. B4. Call B4.
We've always loved this idea that comedy can come from anywhere. So whether it be somebody walking down the street throwing out a joke, or like a bus driver throwing out a joke, we kind of spread the wealth in that way.
I got to tell you bad-ish news. Me and the Turnburner got to head on down to the Evergreen Park stable. Someone's down there tagging horses, and the horses do not like it.
Oh. In that case, I might just hoof it.
Horse killed the guy.
Oh, God.
It caved in the side of his head.
How unhorsing?
Sweetie.
It makes me saddle.
No, don't. Come on now. It's not funny. He had kids.
I'll rein it in.
Hey.
It's for horses.
One of the things that are unique about our writing room is that some of those characters that you speak of are actually writers as well. And so a lot of the, if you will, origination or the style or the depth of that character comes from that writer, as well as some of the stuff that we throw in.
The writer is playing the character. It's like they're bringing extra levels of comedy. I think The Owl is also one with Alan Gale is really, Chicago's alderman for the 51st district.
For now.
Yeah.
Until he gets indicted.
I'm so happy you guys are here. This is perfect timing. It's perfect. Waylon and I were just discussing the urgent need for more black-owned businesses right here on the South Side.
Just think the South Side.
This is not a black-owned business. Unless, he ain't just light-skinned.
No, that is a white man. Yes.
What is this, one South Michigan? So technically, this is the South Side.
No.
I think you call it that, and I'm behind that. But
It's not a thing. I'm not behind.
He's probably also one of the reasons why very little progress is being made. Like his ambition is naked, but it's not really helping anybody.
22nd is usually what people think the South. I believe they call this the Wild Ones. I mean, we're kind of downtown-y-ish. But it's cool.
It's not cool.
In season 3, without giving anything away, you get the sense that he might be bored in his new station in life, and that he's more interested in some of the more superficial things that come with being an alderman than actual urban planning and the serious work that it takes.
I was born on the South Side. I was raised on the South Side.
It's a really hard theme song. As theme songs go, I think it goes Family Ties and
I think Taxi.
Rhoda here.
Sure.
And then Southside right at the top.
Oh, don't forget Mel's Diner.
No. Moonlighting comes to mind.
Moonlighting,
yeah.
Like one of the things that we do is we go around and ask people what their favorite song is for that day or for that week, and you'll be amazed at what they come up with. Some of them go from way back, and some of them are for current artists, but that directly correlates with the music on our show.
You don't need a college degree to be successful. Even without a degree, you could be a CNA, a personal assistant. Yeah, you can even get a food truck. Ain't that right, Miss Garvey?
Hell yeah. My beautician make more money than me.
I heard that. I've been so impressed with Sultan's acting, especially in season 3.
I got several businesses.
Wow. Cap here just liked your last tweet. And you're followed by Tay Diggs, the best man? Listen, are you interested in becoming a mentor for the schools? We could use some black men.
I am not interested in helping other people's kids for free. Sorry, kids.
But I see so much real careful and specific work that I, as somebody who really likes acting specifically, I love that layer is on top of all the funny. So it's still funny as hell, but the quality of the acting, I think, has always been good, but I think season 3 it even gets even better.
And to hear that from Hondo, I don't know what to tell you. So, just saying, that's pretty good.
And our thanks to our public broadcasting siblings at WBEZ who let us crash their studios for this interview. And for those who are eager to revisit the Rent to Own, new episodes are now available on HBO Max. Southsiders are everywhere this week because the singer, songwriter, and native Southsider, Manasseh, credits the gospel soundtrack of his childhood for creating a foundation for his sprawling, kaleidoscopic sound. In studio with his band, The Fam, Manasseh talks about how the threads of family and friends weave into the textures and layers of his psychedelic soul.
It's psychedelic soul. It's a blend of everything that I've come in contact with that's inspired me. Growing up in a house where, before my mother passed, it was primarily gospel. Nothing wrong with that. Grew up in church. I'm a church boy at heart. I'm pretty sure you can hear that in the music, or it's those moments, that are into the music. Singing with my mom and my little brother in the kitchen, and then sneaking and listening to R&B music at school. I'm a reflection of all of my influences. After my mom passed, moving in with my family, they played everything from Snoop Dogg to Bonnie Raitt. And that's a wide range. So I'm very, very grateful and super duper fortunate to, be in the company of masterminds, because I know that everybody's literally going to put their best foot forward. They don't exactly know where I was, creating the music, but everybody resonates with it so much that they're willing to dive into it in such a personal way, in their own way. And we bring all that together and it makes something new. every single time. The song is called Fall in Mud, and it is from the Monochromatic Dream release. It's a song about accountability. Oh my God. Spending your money in places you shouldn't. And, you know, just looking at it from just a broad point of view, like, okay, you know yourself. Why are you doing this? Every time a chance is presented to share, you know, the experience of the music, when the mic is off and we've done our last run, Brandon's hit the last cymbal for the night, you know, for the set, or Ramon hits the last keys. When we resolve it, we want to feel a little freer than we did when we started. I just want everybody to feel loved, and I want everybody to feel like, you know, lighter than they did when they came to the show, because I definitely feel that way.
And for details on Manasseh and the fam's next performance, you can visit our website. And that's our show for tonight. For all of us here at Chicago Tonight, Black Voices, I'm Brandis Friedman. Thank you for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and have a good night.
Closed captioning is made possible in part by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, wishing all a happy and healthy holiday season.